Okay. Welcome back nach der Umbaupause. Renata, can you hear us?
Yes.
Perfect.
Hello.
I think this is a perfect moment to say thanks to Jörn, who was simultaneously translating Francesca's and my talks so that Renata could follow. Thanks, Jörn. Warm applause to you. And yeah, thanks again, Renata, Francesca, for being here for the discussion. Before I open up the panel to the crowd, I have 3 or 4 questions to the both of you. And Renata, I'm going to start with you with a question that somehow I was never able to ask you before, but I'm very interested in. As I said, you were one of the first to coin this term, the framing of digital colonialism, and I found it very interesting to hear that you didn't initially thought about it as a global north, global south issue. But what drove you to work with this framing? How did you and others come up with this global?
Yes, it was a question. It was a question around knowledge, and what how I started this path was, in a way, understanding all the mechanisms of control of information and knowledge that we have today, and how that really has limited action and limited possibilities of what is published, what is not, who gets to decide what people are exposed to, and so on. It was too early for the algorithms, but I had a very close first-row experience with WikiLeaks. And when WikiLeaks happened, I was, part of the volunteer legal team. I was very young lawyer, and that was the first real shock when I experienced, the double standard and the control of the pipes and the control of whatever goes digital, and how a phone call from one office to a company in the US could shut down an information ecosystem, with an information ecosystem, flow of money, and so on. So it really looked like, imperial to me at that time, that in a matter of hours, accounts were closed, websites were down, and only the decentralized power of people mirroring the information that was there were the ones keeping the things alive. And that way, that was absolutely colonial to me. Okay, the same way that they control the truth, the railroads, everything, now they're controlling the way, all our paths to information. And by day, I powerful governments in combination with powerful companies. Mm-hmm. And that was the trigger of the question of digital colonialism. And the second trigger was an encounter with an Indian scholar, Pravir. I cannot pronounce the last name because I don't have it in front of me, unfortunately. But Pravir was one of the earlier persons to unpack all this concept of digital colonialism. We had some conversations around colonialism and how, and the colonialism around the digital commons, as he put it back then.
Thank you. And Francesca, you have put a lot of work into bringing the understanding and also the critique of digital colonialism and coloniality to Germany. So you've been working on, you organized the conferences, the workshops, for example, that I talked about. How did you, how was your experience, bringing this perspective into the technology debate in Germany? Was it a fruitful thing? Is that something that was picked up easily, or how did you experience that?
Thank you for the question. First of all, you have to bear with my sometimes funny English. So it was or it is a fruitful discussion, I would say, but I would mostly say it because I'm doing it also from a feminist perspective. And before I worked for the federal agency, I worked a couple of years for the Heinrich Böll Foundation, and there, in specific, the Gunnar Werner Institute. And I worked there a lot for feminist digital policies and stuff. And I think maybe it's a little bit romanticizing, but I think maybe the feminists are more open to power questions and more open to questions about power relations than maybe the normal people or the non-feminists, I don't know. And in that sense, it was maybe easier to get into this discussion, but nonetheless, also feminist people don't want to talk a lot about racism and stuff. So in that sense, it's a difficult discussion as well, or still a difficult discussion. And now with the federal agency, it's interesting because I think scholars in Germany also start to work on this topic. They are really underfunded, I have to say, because I was on a conference today about racism and anti-Semitism and artificial intelligence, and that was the first thing they said. They don't get enough funding for this kind of topics. So yeah, I think it's an interesting time for this, and I think it's the people are open for it now. Now there's more open than I think maybe 10 years ago for this topic, at least in Germany and Europe. I think the US and stuff, that's a different story.
And I heard you, like in your talk, you mentioned how you also find it critical to work with the word of, or with the framing of global south versus global north. We also thought about a lot if we should use this dichotomy in our book. We, in the end, decided to go with it. But maybe you want to elaborate. What's the critique?
For me, first of all, it's those are colonial words we are still using, and colonial concepts of thinking of how is the world divided and what parts. And normally you would think the global north is the richer one, the better one, the schlauer one. It's the English word for schlau. I'm not sure, but so that would be the first thing I would have a critique with, and I would think that words like global majority and global minority, we are in Europe, and the global north is the global minority actually, and this works really much better to describe the situation and also describe the power relations.
Renata, I heard from you that you also that the like this dichotomy between north and south is also nothing that you would like work with a lot, but you're trying to build bridges. So before opening to the panel, the panel to the audience, I want to ask, like, how how do we do that? Like, how do we turn this fight for a better, just digital future into one that is done together, that is not done for single groups? But yeah, how do we build those bridges?
First I wanted to clarify that it was just for the way that the way that I was seeing digital colonialism 15 years ago affecting all of us, that I didn't divide the north from south, but I'm absolutely aware of the need to explain the impact of this phenomenon and unpack it the way Francesca did it, and the way the book does, because the impacts are always different, and the global south / global majority, we get the triple damage on people, damage on planet, and in the poor technology for poor people, like a limited. It is like the end of the chain, and where the global south contributes all the knowledge and value and gets in the not the real benefits of this, like jumps on technological advancements, but just pays the check 3 times, basically. What you're saying of the bridges, I think we are already doing it since many years. And one of the things that Francesca said is, for example, feminist movement. That bridge is already happening in many ways, and the techno-feminist movement is amazing at sharing practices, sharing knowledges, sharing struggles, sharing tactics. It is also happening in a very exciting way among climate scientists and open science scientists. It happens in a spheres of high trust and informality. It's never the institutions, like really driving these collaborations. It's, the little group that at the academic conference goes to the corner to see how they can share better data. It is the informal rearrangements that we have in many times, paid projects and works. It is this work that goes in parallel that strengthens a lot of spheres of solidarity. It is also happening with workers, and it's quite exciting to see how organized labor is playing a key role in taking back the control of the platforms that should belong to the workers instead of belong to like a big boss somewhere in Silicon Valley. But that's fight back, but also for the creation. And I think that, for example, many, even at small scale, things that, like open standards, so our work can be interoperable, things like shared ethics in the way that we build technology, like paying decent wages when you are like hiring someone to contribute to your project in an NGO, when you're hiring a technologist. Things like that, walking our talk, it is what makes a big impact in the long run. But I think that what we need is a leap from these spaces of trust and resistance and experimentation to something more ambitious. And that's the way that I think that we need more heads looking into that to see how to figure out how we are going to do it. Otherwise, crisis will push us to do it in a very short time frame because we will have no options.
Okay, if I understand you correctly, the solution lies not in technology, I guess, but as you said, it in collaboration. And
it is in trusted networks of smart people that loosely connected in discrete ways, so we are not crushed. That can mobilize rapidly, inspired by solidarity, taking their knowledge to switch off what they need to switch off and to switch on alternatives, basically.
Okay, I have some more questions on how to do that, but I think for this moment I will open the discussion to the audience because I think there might be some questions, comments, critique. Yes, Tom has a microphone and goes around.
Vielleicht auch, wenn jemand auf Deutsch fragen will.
Genau, wenn jemand auf Deutsch fragen möchte, dann können wir es auch übersetzen.
Ich frage auf Englisch. Hey Renata, it's Dimitri from Telekommunistin. Wonderful to see you. I just have one question. I like the hope that you opened with, and I just want to say, what hope can I take from the possibilities that we have now compared to when we first had these conversations 15 to 20 years ago?
How has changed? I didn't hear correctly. How has changed, correct?
Yeah, what possibilities do you see that we have now that we can look for hope and forward progress now?
The possibilities now are much higher chances of being successful because far more people are aware of the problem and the political circumstances globally got really grim, let's say. And the trust of those governing the technology and governing the countries where the technology is made is like reaching new lows. So, and the other thing that has changed is that we have more now. Like the people who have gained skills of organizing across borders and coordinate actions across borders is higher, like naturally higher, and is more distributed, being the majority in the global majority. And I think that that's a circumstance that we need to use, and the stakes are like, the general situation is very bad. So I think that it could be potentially a good catalyzer for any movement and for any global effort. But the interesting thing is that technology is not the central miracle cure to everything anymore. It's a problem. And it's a tool. So I think that the other shift that I see is that we are not adoring this magic force that is delivering us better lives, but questioning the short and long-term effects of these dependencies.
Francesca, you sounded much less optimistic earlier.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. My first instinct would be I have no hope, but we can't live without hope. So we have to have hope that something is going to get better. And maybe that's me. I'm a pragmatic person. I need to break the to-dos really into small things. I don't do this in presentations, but when I have to do this stuff, I do break it in small things. And as Renata already said, you can learn from feminist movements, and you can also learn from the worker movements. And start with connections. That's also something I learned from the talk earlier today that I had with Paz Peña. We have to learn again to dispute the power, and we have to do it actually, and we have to be strong enough or mutig enough to do it. And I think that would be a first step. And we shouldn't underestimate the global connections we already have on the one side. On the other hand, I think it's interesting because that's also something I learned earlier today, that actually AI is some kind of, it's a natural resource. It's gotten a natural resource. You don't have the right for internet now. You have the right to have to use AI nowadays, and that's going to be. It's interesting, I think, and it's difficult to dispute somehow. But I think we have to think further on that. That's not very practical, but yeah.
So the answer would be to say no to AI.
Yeah, sure.
In some cases, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, this would be, but yeah, it could be a possibility.
Tell this to my toothbrush. Okay, there's more from the audience. Hi.
Hi, thank you for this conversation. It's really necessary. I wanted to bring sort of a focus in terms of the sustainability of our high-tech, hyper-industrialized society. And that maybe for me, when I have been writing about technological environments for some time, and I think I started calling it techno-fascism before I was calling it techno-colonialism, because people were being forced to move into this technological environment in ways that the corporate capitalism was deciding for us, even just with mobile cell phones, for example. And I think it's a key moment to look at the point in which the technological environments became hyper-individualized technologies, that we would all be carrying our individual devices as opposed to using technology in a place like a university or a public library or some kind of public telecommunications infrastructure. And so I'm wondering, because this is an audience of mostly like hacker community people thinking about how to how we're being abused by these systems and how we're forcing the sustainability of our only inhabitable planet off the cliff, is how do we dismantle this point where surveillance capitalism became the driving engine of communications over the technosphere. So how can we now, at this point, maybe try to dismantle that we are all being surveilled, 24/7, because the amount of energy that requires is just ridiculously escalating. And so how do we fuck with that? How do we go back to that key moment and say we're not going to accept constant surveillance on everything that we do?
Wants to take that?
You, maybe?
Me?
I can say something, I don't know, very quickly. I think that one of the important things is to preserve the future. Maybe a good starting point is to think what is going to happen with kids. That's one worry, kids that are entering school today, in this next semester, how this changes, how this changes. What is the world that we are going to live in, and how, I have seen very powerful groups around. Organized labor is very powerful, and they have the tools to fight this. Organized parents is also very powerful force to start, sector by sector, rejecting these systems. At least the way that I was trying to do, think that strategy against it is going by the things that are the most precious to us, And one of the things that is more precious to many is that, how my kids are being educated, or how my health is being handled, or things that might be very individualistic at some point, but they're common concerns. That's a tactic that might be useful, And the other is really challenge in these very precarious times, challenging all the money, for the concrete case of Europe, challenging all the money that is going to AI startups with 90% of chances to fail that should be given to common goods. I think that's the other fight. Let's stop feeding the animal. Let's stop feeding the animal with public money. To kill the animal, you have to starve it first. And let's challenge the discourse that, poor AI startups in Europe, poor them, they cannot compete with the AI startups in the US and China, and that's making us not competitive, and that's making us bad societies. And we, challenging and stopping the machine that is feeding the monster. I think that with public money, the private money, we cannot do much than tax them, but the public money should be sacred money that doesn't feed these systems. And I was attacked by saying that at different space, but I think that you get my point. It's absurd that we have publicly funded supercomputers that are for private actors to keep feeding the monster. Mm-hmm. Instead of, having public supercomputers to do the very specific niche cases that AI should do well, basically, for public interest.
Yeah, yes to all was what Renata said, but maybe I have just one sentence. I'm not sure if I want to go back in time. Actually, that would be the first point, because there are so many bad things back in time that we also would have to change. I would suggest more to imagine a future without surveillance and then work on that. That would be my 50 cent or 30 cent.
And maybe I want to add a concrete example, because it was already mentioned in short, but what is going on in the labor sector in terms of practical solidarity, I think is so important right now, because you can see, for example, the workers in Kenya, they are starting to organize. They're starting to unionize. There's lawsuits going on where they sued Meta, but also TikTok and the outsourcing companies to hold them accountable. Because Meta, what do? They say, we're not the employer. We don't bear any responsibility for the working conditions. We're just it's the outsourcing companies, and this is a very interesting lawsuit that is going on in Kenya, in Nairobi right now, that could change this outsourcing economy for good. And I also want to highlight the work that NGOs like Foxglove and the Super Lab do, because they, for example, bring together the tech workers, content moderators from Europe, from Berlin, with those working in Kenya, and they wrote a manifesto together where they are asking for not only better working conditions for them, but solidarity and an end of digital colonialism in how the big tech companies employ people worldwide. So I think there's a lot of going on in terms of practical solidarity there that we can support. I mean, there's a Data Labelers Association that was just founded that we can also support, like practically, like with online donations. So there's also, in some ways, ways how we can use this technology for solidarity. More questions or remarks from the audience? No. Okay. Then I will, yes, there in the back.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a question for Renata, I think. So the idea of building bridges, I think, is a really powerful one. And your approach like relying on decentralized groups and building bridges across those groups and across like different struggles, I think is good. But also with small decentralized groups, there are a lot of inefficiencies that I'm not going to list. So are there any more like centralized movements or figureheads that you think are especially worthy of support? So, for example, like the Pirate Party, I think is doing good work, but they're like ridiculously small, but there's still a figurehead that is worth supporting. Or like open source AI, like large language models or something like that. Like, is there any centralized figurehead that is worth supporting specifically?
I think, like it is one thing that you said, decentralized doesn't need to be small. And that's important to remember, because if the struggle is among, for example, organized frontline providers of health, organized against specific technologies, but organized with changing the way that they use technology and replacing it, it's very powerful. It scales. Like if we can make whole sectors flip and change their approaches. So it's not necessarily like the people who will offer the solutions, the ones that we need to get organized, but the people who will, adopt and push for the changes in that sense. I am afraid that centralization has a problem, which is like when you centralize an effort of this kind, when you are fighting with these giants. I think that the power of decentralization is a strength, because we can play with the unexpected. We can play with different moves, with ninja moves that the big tech is not expecting, both in the solution, the responses, and the political responses, but also in the strategic gains that can be pushed. A quick example is the role that quietly competition authorities in countries of the global south are coordinating with competition authorities in Europe. And they're sharing practices quietly, and that is a headache for big tech, for example, So sometimes, I'm not answering your question of efficiencies, but I think that sometimes there's a lot of strength, and it doesn't need to be like a lot of strength in this decentralized efforts. And I hope that I had the magic formula to make it more centralized, targeted, efficient, and effective, but I don't have.
All right. There's 2 more questions. Yeah.
Hi, this is Elisa from Super. Thank you both for your, also all 3 of you, for your presentations today. I'm really grateful that we are having this conversation here. I wanted to pick on kind of a loose thread that I've heard in, I think, all of your inputs, and that is the big question: is this really an issue that is fundamentally technological? Is that an issue of technology? I heard that it is very much a question of relationships, of trust building, of solidarity. So these are, of course, not technical, but social things. But then again, we have this overarching technical infrastructure that kind of keeps us in place and also makes it harder for us to live that kind of solidarity and live these kind of structures. So my question to you would be, where do we start picking this whole mess apart? Would you start with tech or would you start with society?
Society.
Okay.
Always have to start with society, I think. Yeah, that would be the feminist answer.
Agreed. It is a political problem, so society is the key. And again, appealing to specific groups that can make big changes, that are already organized and that are already conscious of their power as a collective, and using that power to push the things in different directions. Those are if we can get a group of groups, that is when change happens. And walking the talk, of course, walking the talk in very tempting to these courses, no? Walking the talk is especially regarding the other political problems connected to all of this, as you discussed, fair wages for the global south, non-extractivism, and so on. That are not unique problems of digital. There are problems of society, global society as a whole.
Und was sagst du?
Capitalism, get rid of capitalism first, yeah. Okay. Then all the other problems will maybe solved eventually. Okay, we do have 2 more hands up here. 1 in 3? Okay, 3, perfect.
Yeah, I'm also giving talks about the resource consumptions of data centers, and then after a while I came to the conclusion that the only way to get rid of this is degrowth. So you have to radically degrow the system, and then I more or less lose everybody. Not only the right wing, but also the left wing. Nobody wants, not even the green want degrowth, because there is the green transformation. I lose the left people because, yes, how do we get all the underdeveloped people into a state of at least some normal wealth, and then how can we come over it? Because it's not only capitalism, it's only the total ignorance of the global boundaries and the externalization to whatever indigenous people, to women, to the nature. So how do we get rid of this? And normally I clash every discussion with, yeah, actually all the numbers I've seen say we need degrowth. And how do we get into a degrowth economy without losing everybody? This is my question.
A good question. I'm not sure if we can answer it, because regarding the time, I would say let's collect the other questions. We will come back to that. I'm not rushing over it, but let's collect the other questions so that we can bundle them. There's 1 there and 1 in the back. Okay.
Yeah, hello, I'm Danny from Drog Collective, also drog-projekt.org. What about media? We haven't talked about how media is being shaped by colonialism and liberalism and this kind of AI tech. So yeah, maybe we can hear more on that. Manipulation of media in the global now.
Okay, the role of media. And social media, okay. Degrowth, media, social media.
Yeah, just to clarify about whether we're looking towards the future or not, I wasn't saying to go back in time to think like that we can go back before surveillance capitalism, but to understand that like OpenAI, if we're going to see this as growing so fast as it is, the way possibly to stop that is to say to take away our public allowance for them to continue stealing the data that is required for these infrastructures of AI to function. So we have to kind of somehow deal with this abuse that we didn't stop at the beginning. Now we have to think about how to intervene now.
All right. I guess that's the statement that we can leave it like that. But two big questions we received at the end. So how do we convince people that degrowth is the way to go?
Yeah, I have a short answer for this, and which is kind of no answer for your question, no specific answer. But the short answer would be the same I gave to you in some height. We have to imagine a future which is smaller or degrowthed somehow. We couldn't call it like that, but we have to imagine a future and then work on that. I think if you try to get people you have to use less, you have to give people up, it won't work because maybe it's the human side in us, but yeah. So that would be my short question for this.
You want to jump in, Renata?
We are trying a little bit in that question of degrowth, and we are trying very hard to convince developers. Actually, we at the Open Knowledge Foundation, we have targeted developers to develop something to rethink the way that we do technology and reject that we need to do technology just like Silicon Valley does. We applied for a simple app that we are working on, and we cut, and in the end, it's something that delivers what it's supposed to deliver and nothing else. And if we think of transforming the way that technology is being, how we are teaching engineers, how we are building technology, and completely changing the values and changing what the metrics for success. There's not the speed and the maximum that we need to update all the time. I think that could be potentially a direction. It's hard to convince though, but it is the only way that I see getting out of this. I mean, on top of everything, technology no longer works. So we have a big problem that is not even delivering value, as Cory Doctorow says.
The question of media, I guess, is also a very critical one. I mean, the problem is there. I think you mentioned it in a few words, and we all know what the problem is. Like, I mean, as I said, there's been this debate, this critique going on for years. We're trying with a book to make it bigger in Germany, but there's still more to be done, like to make space. And as a journalist working for a community-funded media outlet, I can only say, okay, we have to build our own media because we cannot rely on other media outlets. I know that this is not a solution for everyone, but it's the best answer I can give on this. Okay, Renata has another.
And this is like, the most terminal stage of digital colonialism, because we are creating, the promise that, internet was going to deliver was access to knowledge for everyone. Now we are like, having these distributed paywalls that are completely out of the affordability for the majority of the world, with the data of the majority of the world and the labor of the majority of the world. And these systems are no longer to access knowledge, but to access hallucinations, basically, in many cases. And instead of building bridges, like in the past, you will see the geocities of someone in Greece and I'm in Guatemala, also interesting, blah. Those bridges are burned is interaction between, generating profit systems, generating profit that do not care about learning or content or knowledge of relationships, and is burning bridges instead of building bridges among many people, and putting even further barriers to access high quality information that will inform decisions. It's very tragic.
Okay, last question to end with something to do, because that's something that I took away from both what you said, is that we need to look at the small packages. So where do we start? If people leave this evening tonight or watch this talk online and think, I want to do something, I want to change something, one thing where they should start in very short words. Should I start? Okay, I can start because I had 3 minutes to think about it. When I thought of the question, okay, I would say, I know it's just the bare minimum, but right now the EU is dismantling their supply chain law, Lieferkettengesetz. Before it was even in place, and this is not a progressive policy, but it's just a bare minimum of keeping companies responsible for what the horrors that happen in their supply chains, be it electronic companies or be it mining companies. And we cannot allow the European Union to dismantle this. So this would be one thing. This is happening right now. This is a fight that we need to pick up.
Get engaged, I think, in a transdisciplinary way. Get engaged with Super, for example, or with Netzformer, or learn to dispute power. I have to learn it, and we have to learn it probably together. That would be a small first step.
Renata.
Challenge the narratives that are claiming that Europe has to burn money in AI startups because it's far behind China and the US. Demand that your taxes are invested in what you care the most, people and planet, basically.
All right. I think that's a good. This is good last words from the panel. Before I hand it over to Tom to say the really last words of this evening, I really want to say thank you, Renata. Thank you, Francesca, for being here. Thanks to the audience for engaging with us, and very, very big thanks for the C-Base team making this possible. I know it wasn't too easy technologically wise, but you've done such a great job. Thanks for making this happen. Thanks for making it possible, all of you. Thank you.
Actually, these were my last words. I wanted to thank you. Also, thanks to Seven and the very special setup tonight. Thanks to you three on the panel, especially thanks to you, Ingo. And not only for being here tonight, to all of you, but also for your work that you're doing. This is like very inspiring and very important work. So thanks a lot. One round of applause again, please. And also thanks to Seven, to the bar boards, especially Barb tonight, then Mystic Spiral for the sound, and to the whole crew of C-Base. Thank you a lot. I'm going to change to German now. I hope this is okay with you, Renata, because actually now I'm someone also already did it. Ich wollte auf Deutsch wechseln. Genau, vielen Dank auch an die Menschen, die das Ganze hier möglich machen. Wir organisieren den Netzpolitischen Abend einmal im Monat, und das ist nur möglich. Die digitale Gesellschaft hat wenig Geld, zu wenig Geld, und ist weitgehend auf die Spenden von vielen Menschen angewiesen. Wir haben sehr, sehr viele Menschen, viele von euch spenden sicherlich. Falls ihr doch noch ein bisschen, 1 oder 2 Euro übrig habt, gerne, damit das Ganze hier weiter möglich bleibt. Nicht nur um den Abend zu veranstalten, sondern auch tatsächlich um zu versuchen, dass sich Leute engagieren können, dass wir tatsächlich auch zum Beispiel das, was von Renata angesprochen wurde, die EU versuchen können, mit unseren Möglichkeiten daran zu hindern, Geld zu verbrämen und zu verbrennen, sondern ansatzweise mal versuchen, vernünftige Politik zu machen. Das versuchen wir alles. Und zum Lieferkettengesetz tatsächlich, vielleicht, wir haben angefragt, vielleicht haben wir tatsächlich beim nächsten Netzpolitischen Abend schon einen Talk dazu. Das wäre sehr schön. Wir werden definitiv einen dazu machen, wahrscheinlich schon beim Netzpolitischen Abend 148, der am 1. Juli hier auf der Seabase wie üblich stattfinden wird. Genau, auf der Seabase im Stream habe ich am Anfang vergessen anzusagen. Ich hoffe, die Leute im Stream werden es trotzdem gefunden haben. Mittlerweile nicht nur bei YouTube, sondern auch auf dem PeerTube-Kanal der Seabase, der ordentlich funktioniert, soweit ich es mitbekommen habe. Vielen, vielen Dank, dass ihr... Bitte? YouTube war gar nicht drauf, super, perfekt. Dann benutzen wir das nur noch als Archiv für all die Menschen, die uns sonst nicht finden. Sehr schön. Dann, ja, bis zum nächsten Mal. Habt noch ein bisschen Spaß an der Bar und unterhaltet euch und versucht irgendwie, ja, wir sehen uns da auf den Straßen oder wo auch immer.